Hello everybody. Today I wanted to talk about some of these tests that you see on the different YouTube channels. If You Signal does these quite a few times, and then Calabash does them too. So basically it's an iron unmasking test where you've got a block of wood set up and then you've got a target that you're trying to unmask in them. Now I've got a little bit harder ones here. As you can see, this is probably one of the more difficult ones where we've got two layers of iron, one above the other, and then I've got a token in the middle. But all of these tests that I've got here are multi-plane, multi-nail, and I think the multi-nail is more representative of what's really out there in the ground. You know, occasionally you get just one nail, but you know, what are the chances that there's just one nail and it's just off the tip of a coin and it's masking it? So I've got a number of tests here. Here's one with a dime with multiple nails. And then here's one with a penny. This is probably the hardest one that's got two nails on it that are on two different planes. So we're going to go over these starting with the Deus 2. I'm going to do other tests with other detectors, but I'm going to start with the Deus 2 on top of the ground and show how the Deus 2 unmasks or doesn't unmask these different tests. And then to make it even harder, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and bury these in the ground. Now I've got high mineralized ground. Some of the areas of my yard will max out the Deus 2 mineralization meter. So what we'll do is we'll bury these and then we'll see how they react, or how the Deus 2 reacts to these different tests with the dirt added to it. I see a lot of comments on YouTube where people are saying, yeah, that's great, but what if you add dirt? Add dirt like it's a real test or a real scenario and not just something above the ground. So we're going to do that and see what happens. So we'll start with the Deus 2. I'll have another video where I use the Manticore with the different coils that it's got and show how the Manticore does on these two. But that'll be a later video. Today we're going to do the Deus 2, and I'll do the 9-inch coil and the 11-inch coil, and we'll go over that and see how these do. So let's go outside and do the above ground test, then we'll get these buried and see how the Deus 2 does on those. So stay tuned, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm out in the test garden. I've got this dirt area here that I've cleaned all the nails out of so that we don't have an iron interference issue, and we're going to go over these one at a time. The only thing I've changed with the fast program is take the silencer down to 0, and we'll go over each of these targets. So you can see that it's not reading a nickel ID, and I know there's some concern with, like If You Signal said that you get the dreaded 7, 8, 9. I think that if you use the audio, you can tell really which ones are iron and which ones aren't. I mean, I personally start turning on a target. If it's still coming through and I can turn 30 degrees, I'm digging it regardless. I find that most of the time, if you turn on the target and it goes to iron, it's going to end up being a nail. It's faulting off the head. But if you can turn on it and it's still coming in cleanly at 30 degrees or more, you should dig that target. So that's one I would dig. Let's get the dime, then we'll get the penny or the token and the penny. The penny's the hardest. So here's the dime. You know, same thing. It's coming in low numbers, but I can still, when I turn on it, get a fairly good tone on it, and that's something I would dig. Now this is the one I'm going to bury when I get ready to do it. I think it's one of the easier ones compared to these others, but we'll put some dirt on it and see how it affects the target and the ability for the Deus 2 to pick it up. Here's the token. Pretty big target, so it should be easy. And it is. And again, I mean, it disappears at less than 30 degrees that one direction, but as I turn on it this way, I can almost get 90 degrees on it before it goes away. So that's definitely something I'm going to dig. And then finally, the hardest one is the penny. Can only get a click out of it. When I turn on it, I'm still getting a little something, but honestly, that's something I'd probably pass on. But you just never know. So now let me get some dirt over this one with the dime on it, and we'll see if the dirt affects the ability of the Deus 2 to pick that up. And I'll show you the mineralization meter here right now. on it. So there's no iron here. And if you watch that meter, it fills right up. So I've got fairly mineralized dirt here. So we'll throw this, let's throw the dime one in the ground here with about an inch or two of dirt over it. So ground level is going to be about an inch above the nails and about 2 inches above the dime. Okay, let's see what we can do as far as finding it. So even with dirt on it, Deus is still able to pick that target out. Actually, almost seems like it's a better signal. And I'm actually in this direction starting to get an ID on it. So with the dirt on it, I'm actually getting an ID. So occasionally, whereas air testing I was not. So this is kind of interesting because the Deus 2 is actually doing better on the target buried in this highly mineralized ground than it was as doing it as an air test. So very interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens with some of these other detectors that I test using this same method in the future. The Manicore I'm going to try next. I was going to try the 11-inch coil on this, but I think this unmasked well enough that I don't think there's any need to do that. Okay, so to further put this test to the test, we're going to bury the penny, which was the hardest one. And so this will be about, the top nail will be about an inch above, or I mean below the dirt. Penny's going to be about 2 inches below. We'll go over this one and see if this dirt is also enhancing the target like it was on the dime. So remember, this was the harder test. Same settings. Gotta turn the machine back on. Actually, I'll have to go in and change the silencer back to 0. And the notch, we're going to take the notch out too. Take that all the way down to 0. Okay. Alright, we'll go over this now. This is the penny buried with 3 nails. Dirt has not affected it. Still comes through about the same. It actually probably comes in a little better because I can turn on it farther. Still get the target. Actually, I'm looking like I'm going to be able to turn all the way around it. Not quite getting an ID there, but really pretty good audio. So quite surprising results that when you add dirt, it's actually enhancing the target that you're trying to find. And I'm fairly surprised with that outcome right there. So that is very interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens with some of these other detectors that I test. The Manicore will be next. We'll see if it changes from above ground test to below ground tests. And I'll have some other detectors that I'll test as well. So stay tuned for the Manicore test coming up. I don't know, a few days, week, I don't know. Just depends on when I got time for it. But anyway, thanks for watching.